Hello and welcome to talkSPORT's Game Day podcast with me, Sam Matterface, talkSPORT's Alex Crook and former Charlton, Chelsea, West Ham and Benfica left-back Scott Minto. Coming up, Newcastle secure Champions League after a goalless draw at home to Leicester. Result leapfrogs the Foxes above Leeds United and gives them a very small chance of survival heading into the final day. Was it right to go for a draw? Manchester City eased to a Premier League title once again. It's their third one in a row. Will it be as easy for them to lift the Champions League and the FA Cup? We'll discuss the possibility of a treble. Brighton secure European football. Congratulations to them. Fantastic. Europa League is going to be their destination next year. Can they keep hold of all their big hitters in the squad? And after a season to forget for Spurs, is Arnie the right man to fill the managerial slot? It's the Game Day podcast from talkSPORT.
For the first time in 20 years, Newcastle United are a Champions League club again. But Leicester's Premier League status is still alive. They have to hope Everton mess up at home on Sunday, and they have to beat West Ham.
We've took it to the last game now. What we've done is made Everton need to win the game, because if we win ours, a draw's not good enough for them, and that's all we could do really, because as I say, not many people expected us to get a result tonight, and if we didn't get a result, then a point would have been enough for them.
Amazing achievement from where we've come from in a really short period of time. Can't compliment everyone really connected with the team enough, the players, the staff, the board, everybody has contributed to this, and a great day for the club.
Hello one and all. Yes, Scott Minto is here. Hello.
Good morning, Sam. How are you? I'll tell you what, it is great to see Crookie wearing that shirt today, isn't it?
Oh, he's looking bright and bold in that Nottingham Forest jersey. Congratulations, Nottingham Forest. And he's fulfilling his forfeit. I had loads of messages about you over the weekend. Please don't let him wear our shirt, they were saying. But look, we had to force you into it. Look at you. You look so happy to be wearing it as well. You must be pleased they stayed up.
I mean, it's a garish colour, but I actually think it's quite slimming, so I don't mind it.
It's not garish, and it's not slimming either, mate. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Does it take 6 stone off you?
It does.
Right, okay, let's talk about Newcastle and Leicester City. What a great night for Newcastle United last night. Eddie Howe guiding them to the promised land of the Champions League. The first time in 20 years they got over the line with a draw. But I suppose the first question really is about Leicester City, isn't it? And about their approach to the game and why they decided to put 10 men behind the ball, not really attack, and hit and hope, really, that they might get something on the breakaway. They didn't. And as a result of that, they find themselves in a situation that they are relying on Everton to drop points in their game against Bournemouth on Sunday. Everton at home, final day of the season, they need to win, and they stay up. Leicester have gambled on the fact that they believe that Everton won't do that. That's why they approach the game like that, right? I'm not entirely sure that's the right philosophy. What did you boys think of it?
It was an odd one. You know, I got to the end of the game and I wasn't quite sure what I just watched. I mean, I guess if you're a Leicester fan, the big takeaway is, where's this kind of backs against the wall defensive solidarity been when they were leaking 5 goals at Fulham? Or getting battered by Liverpool? You know, if they'd shown that kind of
commentary
commitment
last night, I said I don't understand why they didn't employ this approach earlier.
Agreed. If they'd shown that kind of commitment earlier in the season, arguably they wouldn't be in the trouble they are. I think Everton will beat Bournemouth at home on the last day, and therefore the calculated risk will backfire. I think they needed to show more intent to try and win the game. I get sitting in for the first 20 minutes, don't concede, silence the crowd. They did that.
Yeah.
But I'd have been fascinated to see what Dean Smith's response would have been had Newcastle scored one of those numerous chances. What would the game plan have been then?
Well, that's what Danny Mills was saying during commentary last night. He was saying, I want Newcastle to score because I want to see what Leicester City are going to do next, because the game plan was completely just to sit back, not have any possession. I think they had something like 16% possession in the game and the one shot in the match. Now, Scott, if they stay up, it will be hailed as a genius move. But should Everton just beat Bournemouth, it's an idiot move, right? Because if Leicester win this game last night, I'm not saying that they're going to do that because Newcastle are a better team than them, right? And over the course of the season, Newcastle have displayed that. They've beaten Manchester United at St James's Park. They've beaten loads of teams that are in decent form. Brighton at St James's Park. They've dragged themselves from the depths of relegation a year ago into the Champions League. They're obviously a team in good form. They've won 9 of the last 12. However, right, if you don't try and win the game, you could find yourself in a situation where it's all over for you, even if you do your job on the final day of the season. I just think it is a gamble. It's not a calculated risk. It really is a gamble.
Right, you won't be surprised to know that I'm going to try and play a little bit of devil's advocate here. And
okay, go for it. Let's see what we can test.
Angle. You know, on the one hand, you're saying where's that defensive, solidity and fight been? Yeah. But then you're asking them to attack.
Hold on a second. Let me explain that point straight away. Because if you add the defensive solidity, the last 6 games, you wouldn't be in a situation where you needed to go to Newcastle and attack.
But they didn't play that way the last 6 games. That's the point.
That's what I mean. Why didn't they do it? It's stupid.
Well, then what we're saying, then James Maddison should have been on the bench earlier.
No, I'm saying that they should have shown that defensive rigidity earlier in the Premier League. Maybe should have changed to a back 5 earlier.
His argument would be the back 5 plus 3 central midfielders. Now you could have put Maddison instead of Iheanacho, but Vardy up front,
which is what they did at half time.
That 5-3 gave that solidity that he felt he hasn't been able to do. So listen, it's a massive gamble. It's a massive, massive gamble, and I personally believe Everton will beat Bournemouth and that Leicester will go down. But you're asking, you really in a snapshot gave how good Newcastle are, and at St James's Park as well, against the Leicester side that has conceded 8 goals in the previous 2 games.
Totally.
Now, are you really wanting them to try and attack and go forward? What they were hoping for was, I mean, that's the first clean sheet since before the World Cup.
Yeah. And
you can't be asking to score 2 goals at St James's Park to win a game when you really need it. It's a massive, massive, massive gamble. But what I would say is it keeps them in the game right now, because now the pressure psychologically is on Everton, says that we've now got to win because there's every chance Leicester could.
But isn't the point this? You've waited too late. So because it's 2 games out from the end of the season, you don't have the luxury of being able to fall back on the gamble of trying to keep a clean sheet and nick one on the counter-attack, because that doesn't help you in terms of points to stay in the Premier League. If you had done this 3, 4, 5 games ago, then you may well have accumulated enough points so that when you went to Newcastle, you could quite happily have played this way. And if you've got a point, it's a major triumph for you. But because of the situation that you are in, needing the points on the board, 3 points behind Everton going into the game last night, 1 point actually only advances you a very small amount and doesn't really change the complexion too much. Because ultimately, even if they'd lost last night, right, their goal difference is such that, in terms of significance, that they could end up winning on the final day still and getting beyond Everton because they've got a better goal difference than them. So I don't understand how they think it's the right decision to make at this time, bearing in mind they haven't done that up until this point. They should have done it earlier if this was the way that they thought they were going to get the points on the board.
Psychologically now, with the pressure that Everton have been under all season, and they've buckled at Goodison as well away from home, they now are going into this game thinking we have to get all 3 points because there's every chance that Leicester can. But, Sam, I'm 100% with you. Too little, too late. You know, because you're still handing the power to somebody else. Whereas if they had done that a few games ago, and I was at the Fulham game, I was at the Cottage, and they were shocking, absolutely shocking. You know, so look, I'm with you. It's too late, but I understand why they did it at St James's Park against a side that, you know, is going for Champions League football.
Yeah, well, they got Champions League football, and they could have probably have secured it with a victory last night. It was only the lucky charm of the goalpost that stopped them from scoring a number of goals last evening. I thought Everson had a very odd game. Kept coming and flapping for crosses. Didn't understand what he was attempting to do at one point. You know, I would have thought that out of all things, you know that Kieran Trippier is going to fizz balls under your crossbar from set pieces. That's kind of what he's been doing all season. And he looked completely disorientated by the whole thing. It was very strange. Look, I actually think it would be good I want Leicester to stay up. I hate the fact that there is the Premier League fairy tale, the team that aren't Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, that have won the Premier League, given everybody this great fairy tale, and then just, 7 years later, they're going to end up being relegated back to the Championship. I mean, it's just...
Not the first time, though. Blackburn did it.
Yeah, Blackburn Rovers did it as well. Yeah, slightly different way of things happening though, wasn't it? Because they sort of spent so much money that they were going to be challengers for the title. Whereas I don't really think we ever saw Leicester's title challenge coming. It was something that almost appeared out of nowhere. Anyway, let's get to the bottom of the table because there's been some big games over the weekend that may well define what happens going forward, including an absolute shellacking for Sam Allardyce.
A terrible afternoon for Leeds United in their bid for a Premier League survival with finishes West Ham 3, Leeds 1.
Full time here, Wolves 1, Everton 1. Drama indeed. In stoppage time, Everton found something.
Victory here for Nottingham Forest means they are safe. They've avoided relegation.
It was just a brilliant day for the players and, equally great day for the supporters and one that we deserved. It's just amazing to be able to continue to allow the club to move forward because, that's what we all want to do.
West Ham 3, Leeds United 1. Well, this was interesting, wasn't it? It was a chaotic game from start to finish. It was non-stop entertainment, but ultimately Sam Allardyce and Leeds United fluffed their lines. Once again, they threw away a lead from a winning position. That's 25 points dropped now from winning positions this season. How much hope have they given themselves?
Not enough. I commentated the game for 20 minutes. They were the dominant force. They got the goal they deserved. They looked like they could put a slightly rusty West Ham side under all kinds of pressure. But as soon as they conceded, they wilted. And that's a big problem for me in terms of the character in the dressing room because it's not the first time. I also commentated the game against Palace when they managed to concede 5 goals, having dominated much of the match. So I think there's a mindset issue. I did like a line from our colleague at The Athletic, Phil Hay, when Sam Allardyce picked up that $5 and tried to give it to the fourth official. Phil Hay said that's going to be the sum of his survival bonus because it's not going to happen, is it? I think they need too much to go in their favour and I'm not sure they've got the mentality to even get their own job done, to be honest.
So they play Tottenham on that Sunday at 4:30, Scott. But prior to that, we've seen them lose Patrick Bamford and Rodrigo in this game to injury. Without those two, the goal threat diminishes, and they've got absolutely no chance of keeping clean sheets.
So just as well they're playing Spurs then. Where I was at last week. Look, absolutely. I mean, they're snookered, aren't they? They need a miracle. I'm actually very sad to see if they do go down because I loved covering them in the Championship when I was at Sky. It felt like a proper Premier League game and stadium, a great atmosphere. But since Bielsa's gone, we all know it's just 11 wins now. I think that win at Anfield that kept Jesse Marsch in the job looking back, was obviously not good. And what is Big Sam meant to do? He's literally turning around. Again, we talk about Frank Lampard before turning around a Titanic. My goodness me, Sam coming in, so difficult. And he's telling them what to do. And they're not doing it. They're already in that mental and physical rut. I'm surprised to hear they say that they don't seem fit because I think Leeds United have always been fit, even under Jesse Marsch and certainly under Bielsa.
Luke Ayling said that, didn't he? He said that he didn't feel as if that fitness was there anymore. And I think it's a really interesting point, actually, because basically what Leeds United were they were a group of committed individuals rather than talented quality players that worked harder than everybody else and would outrun every team in the Premier League. And because of the murder ball sessions and the double sessions and triple sessions, they would be into a point of the season where everybody else was starting to tire and they could still go. And that was the good thing about them, right? Now, without that fitness, you've got a collection of players that aren't of the requisite quality but don't have that extra special ingredient which was given to them by Marcelo Bielsa, which was that fitness. And now they haven't got that edge over any of those teams. So where they would score those late goals and get back into games because they had that extra little kick towards the end of a match, that's gone. But so much else has gone as well. There's no tactical discipline there. It's incredibly chaotic. I heard Sam Allardyce very pointedly say there wasn't a centre forward on the bench, but actually forgot that he was sitting next to £35 million Jorginho Ruter. Maybe that's because he's seen him play. I don't know. But it's just, it's absolutely, it's chaotic, isn't it? And behind the scenes, Andrea Radrizzani is trying to complete a deal for Sampdoria. It looks as if that means that the club is going to be taken over regardless by the 49ers. I mean, haven't Sampdoria just been relegated and been totally useless in Serie A. It's not a great recipe for him to go in there either. But we'll see where Victor Orta turns up next. Maybe he'll be in Serie B too. What about West Ham United though? A goal for Declan Rice, your old club, Scott, and it was probably his farewell performance at the London Stadium. And what a performance it was.
Look, we talked about him in the Man U game, and Man U, the first 20 minutes, I thought were very, very good. And we'd spoken pre-match and said about how we believe that Declan Rice, or I believe Declan Rice, is a sensational player, and he's got to somehow now turn it around. But as I said it, I thought, how's he going to do that on his own? But he practically did. And then he steps up here and again, just scores. And I think West Ham fans know, a bit like, you know, if Harry Kane does leave Spurs, they'd be okay with it. They'd understand it, because you've got a Champions League player who, for me, is bordering on world class. He's not quite there yet. But if you give him... I also think, you know, you say about, or you might ask, where would he go? I think he's good enough to go absolutely anywhere. And I include Manchester City in that. I don't think City will come in for him. But I think he would do a very good job in whether he'd be one of the holders or whether he'd be one of the sort of box-to-box, the number 8. He's a fantastic player. I now feel, as sad as it is to say, and hopefully his last game will be winning a European trophy and holding that above him for West Ham. He needs to move on.
Wolverhampton Wanderers won. Everton won. A 99th minute goal for Everton by Yerry Mina. Might not prove to be pivotal, but it could be a huge moment for them. Good news, the club continues to be on the cusp of a £600 million takeover from American fund MSP Sports Capital. They need an injection of cash. They need a new direction. That needs to happen. But before all that goes through, they've got to try and stay in the Premier League. Now, I think the common wisdom is that we look at them and we all think that they will do, because they've shown that energy and fight that Sean Dyche has been talking about for so long. And they've probably showed that more often than Leicester, more often than Leeds United, really. But ultimately, this is a club that should never be in this situation, Crook. They should never have been scrapping around at the bottom of the table. It's happened far too often, but it's happened because of mismanagement, not because of the fact that this is a club with bad players.
And it's not happened because of a lack of ambition either. You know, you get two types of owners, don't you? You get the ones who reach for the stars, and you get the ones who are happy just to tread water. I think Farhad Moshiri has reached for the stars, but he's come crashing back down to earth very quickly. This is going to be a high-pressure situation, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin hobbling off against Wolves is a problem, because if they don't have that focal point in attack, Bournemouth have enough weapons on the counter to cause Everton problems. So I think his fitness is going to be absolutely key. Bournemouth have lost their last 3 games. We both know that Gary O'Neill won't want to end the season with 4 successive defeats, because then there becomes a danger that a poor start to one season limps into a bad start to the next. And also, there's an irony here, because when Bournemouth were relegated from the Premier League, they were relegated at Goodison Park. Obviously, they've got some survivors from that team, so maybe their eyes will be on revenge. But if you look at the social media feed, there's a real animosity between Bournemouth and Leeds. I won't bore you with too many details, but it goes back to a Boxing Day game way back when the Leeds fans basically trashed the city centre. Bournemouth, as a result of that, weren't allowed to play on Boxing Day for a number of years. There's a lot of Bournemouth fans who are happy to wave the white flag here and send Leeds down.
Yeah, it went on for years. They trashed the town. It was when Harry Redknapp was the manager, in fact. They trashed the town, Leeds United, during the 80s, and Bournemouth weren't allowed to play. I thought it was on a bank holiday. It was a sunny bank holiday, and then they sort of had this big sort of ban then that they could never play on a bank holiday ever again, and that's only just changed. So you're right, there is animosity. So, but Bournemouth might just sit there and roll over and allow Everton to win, just so Leeds go down. You never know. But so the situation is like this: Everton play Bournemouth 4:30 on Sunday. If Everton win, they stay up, and Leeds and Leicester go down. If Everton drop points, then Leicester can leapfrog above them if they beat West Ham United. Leeds need Everton to lose. They need Leicester to at least draw or lose, and they need to beat Tottenham in order to stay in the Premier League. Good luck with that one, Big Sam. You'll need more than finding a fiver on the floor in order to escape this little trap, I think.
I was going to ask you about Big Sam, actually. Because I think he's done okay in a short period of time. I don't think he could have done an awful lot more, to be honest. The reason they're losing games is not because of his tactics, it's because of the individual errors that have been there for a long time. If Leeds go down, how would their fans feel about someone who's got a proven track record of taking a team up from the Championship, staying on? Would he want to stay on? I think he probably would.
I think he does.
Yeah.
I think he does want to stay on. I think from what I'm hearing from him, he sounds like a man who wants to stay on. He's got an idea of how he can rebuild the club. But he's talked about that with the owners and tried to point it out. But it's different owners. It's going to be completely different people when it comes to the summer. So it'll be interesting to see how they go ahead.
You know, coming in and being a caretaker manager is different to being a manager, a permanent manager. Now, Big Sam has done it. He knows he knows the ropes. It's what Leeds hierarchy want, you know, coupled with, you do need the fans on board. You can't get someone who is going to be toxic earlier on in the season.
Is there a suggestion that with Sam Allardyce, what might be a good idea is to keep him on for next year and have someone alongside him who's going to eventually take over as the boss, a coach who works sort of under him, and almost he mentors that person. There's a slower transition so that ultimately, if he does take them up into the Premier League, that person's ready for it in a couple of years' time. Is that a better way of doing it rather than trying to go round, find someone to drag you out of the Championship? I mean, Leeds' priority is going to have to be getting out of the Championship, but that's going to be Leicester's priority. It's going to be Southampton's priority as well. And there are other teams down there that have been there for a while who know the course and distance. Middlesbrough obviously having a go as well, and a few other teams that would fancy their chances of trying to get up into the top flight. It's going to be a very competitive division next year. So surely an old head might be a better navigator than some young buck that they bring in from the continent or from elsewhere.
I think you're right. And I don't see at this stage who you're going to get who's got more of a chance of taking Leeds out of the Championship than Sam Allardyce. It's interesting, actually, that our Leeds supporting producer has already poured cold water over that. I do think there's a snobbery with Leeds fans when it comes to their managers. And it's this cult of Bielsa. I've mentioned it on talkSPORT earlier in the season. It's almost like you've come out of a marriage, but you can't let the ex go. Part of Leeds' problem is because the fans, I think some of the players as well, they're still clinging on to Bielsa. He isn't going to remarry you. He's moved on, okay? Forget about that, and forget about playing Bielsa ball in the Championship. Just get a manager who's going to get you out of the division, because if I'm not mistaken, last time you went down, you were there for 16 years.
Nottingham Forest 1, Arsenal 0. Nottingham Forest secure safety for another Premier League season after a victory over Arsenal by a goal to nil. Taiwo Awoniyi with that strike, and what a great end to the season he has had. And as a result of that victory for Nottingham Forest, that meant that Arsenal couldn't win the league anymore. Manchester City were champions without even kicking a ball. Now, when you bear in mind they've signed 30 new players this season, Steve Cooper's been sort of dodging the bullet over the course of the whole season. I think he obviously deserves a lot of credit. We've made Crook wear a Tricky Trees shirt just because he would not have the faith. He didn't have the faith in the Tricky Trees. Whereas Scott and I were really revving up our support for Steve Cooper, who's a brilliant coach.
Do you know what, Sam? I didn't think that they would do it, I'll be honest.
I know you didn't. No one did.
No.
There's only one lone outrider here.
One lone broadcaster who kept on saying it all the time, but he was right in the end. Look, I still think that game that you defined it on was not the game that kept them up in terms of, it was against Liverpool. It was the teams around them. It was recent games, recent wins that they've done it. Yeah. And that's where Steve Cooper and Gary O'Neill needs so much credit, because when the pressure's really on, they found a way to win, and they got their players in a mental, psychological state where they're not scared by the fear of failure. And we've seen big clubs in Leicester and Leeds and Everton struggling to deal with that pressure, whereas Steve Cooper's done a great job.
Do you know what? It was that game that made me think they would do it, but not because of the result, right? I was lucky that day. I went to the ground early. I saw Steve. He invited me in. We sat down. We talked about the game plan, and he explained to me how they were going to play that day. He went into real detail about what they were going to do to stop Trent Alexander getting on the ball, what they were going to do when they didn't have the ball, and then what they were going to do when they won it back, and how they were going to progress. Because one of the criticisms of them at that stage of the season was that they were defending quite deep, and they were keeping teams at arm's length and not conceding that many goals, but they were never, ever threatening at the other end. So as soon as they conceded one goal, the game was over. And he said, basically, what we're going to do is we're going to stay in shape. We're going to try and win the ball. We're going to shut down the passing lanes. And then when we nick the ball, we're going to have the confidence to play. We've got to have the confidence to play. So as soon as we turn it over, we've got to be able to play the next 2-3 passes and move up the pitch. Because if we don't do that, we've got no chance in this league. We have to have the confidence to play. There was a lot more tactical discussion than just that. I've tried to boil that down into a short sentence. But because of the fact that he had explained the whole system to me, and then I'd watched it unfold in front of my eyes, I thought, hold on, if he's convinced me that they can do this and then beat Liverpool, and it happens exactly the way he suggested, then he must be able to convince these players. And if he can cajole that huge group and distill it into one that he can use, then he's got every chance. And the football they played on that day was excellent, because they did beat the Liverpool press, and then they did play and they did score goals. And actually, they could have scored 1 or 2 more during that match too. So that's why. And I just think he's a brilliant communicator. I think he's great with players. I think he's obviously very well versed in the game. He's a new type of coach, and everything's collegiate. They discuss things. He brings everybody with him. It's different to the old school, that's sure. He's definitely not Brian Clough, but he is. He's carried that club along, and he's got a great chance of making a big name for himself, Steve Cooper.
Yeah, and he's on the radar of other clubs as well, isn't he? So Forest will obviously hope that he'll stay. I think he will now that they've stayed up in the Premier League. And I think you have to praise him for his part in their recruitment as well, because their best player and one of the best signings of the season for me has been Morgan Gibbs-White, and we know that was very much a move that was led by Steve Cooper, because he knew him from Swansea and he knew him from younger England age groups. I like Danilo in midfield as well. I think Navas has made a big difference in terms of presence. Looks like he's going to leave at the end of his loan. They're trying to sign Dean Henderson on a permanent basis. I'm still not entirely convinced that Dean Henderson is quite as good a goalkeeper as he thinks he is, but I think the foundations are there to have a really good go at it again next season.
There we go. Another obliteration from Crook to a professional footballer who plays in the Premier League week in, week out when he's fit. Taiwo Wanyu's another one. Nico Williams, another one. 2 players that made great contributions, but were in the youth academy at Liverpool when Steve was working there. So, again, he's had a lot of input into some of the recruitment decisions. Not so much in others. So I think balancing that and managing upwards has been a real sort of terrific feat for him. Well, that win for Forest secured a 5th win in the Premier League in 6 seasons for Manchester City. Are we looking at the best Premier League side in history? We'll discuss them next.
Arsenal needed to get something here, and they haven't. Manchester City are Premier League champions once again.
Ilkay Gundogan picks up the Premier League trophy. We know that the Blue Moon isn't rising. It's now the dominant force on the Premier League.
Well, they were champions without kicking a ball. I was there on Sunday afternoon, and I must admit, I thought their performance on Sunday was second gear. But then again, they played a second team, and they were playing a second-rate opposition. They beat Chelsea by 1-0. Raheem Sterling had a couple of good chances, couldn't finish them off. That's Chelsea's season in a nutshell. And to be honest with you, it was just a matter of time before they made the breakthrough. It didn't take too long for Julian Alvarez to do just that. What a terrific headline act in the B team he is, by the way. Julian Alvarez, 17 goals for the season. If we'd bought a striker, if Chelsea had bought a striker, right, and they'd scored 17 goals this season, we'd probably build a statue outside Stamford Bridge. The fact that they've bought Julian Alvarez as a second striker and he's got 17, I mean, it's beyond compare, Scott.
Do you know what? It's incredible to think that Erling Haaland has scored all his goals, and then you come out with that. The second striker has still got 17, very nearly on 20, and who knows, may well make 20. I think it just shows again just how good that guy called Pep Guardiola is. I've said what I've said about him all season. I think he's the best. I think we'll look back eventually and say he will be the very best. And I've been saying this actually for years. When I covered the Spanish football, I was gutted when he left Barcelona. I really wanted to see Pep and cover Pep Guardiola's Barcelona week in, week out. So everything about that club, is set up in the right direction. And Pep Guardiola was, years before with the CEO and the sporting director, all brought in with the view of bringing in Pep Guardiola because they knew how good he was.
And dominance. The view was dominance, and they've certainly dominated, haven't they? I mean, I said this when they lifted the trophy. You know, it is the dominant force on the Premier League landscape now. You know, they are in control of this league. How do we wrestle it back from them, Crook?
Very difficult, you know, because again, we have to address the FFP situation, but I think, you know, Alvarez is a prime example of where actually it's not all about the money. It's about good recruitment. It's about good coaching, the way that Guardiola has changed the style of play to accommodate Haaland, and what he's done with John Stones this season. He just finds new ways of managing to win trophies. Arsenal spent so many nights top of the table, but ultimately they're going to finish, 10 points behind the champions. Liverpool have run them close a couple of times, still not managed to get over the line on those occasions. So who do you see coming out of the pack? You know, Manchester United got this takeover situation. How much money are they going to have to spend in the summer? I don't think Arsenal will be quite as good next season as they have been this. I think they've been beneficiaries of circumstances coming their way. Maybe Pochettino at Chelsea, but I think they're probably a couple of transfer windows away from really being title challengers. Liverpool are going to rebuild. I think City will probably be even more dominant next season.
Do you know what? I think if Jurgen Klopp was given, you know, a blank check, I think there'd be half a chance there. But
let's not pretend that he hasn't spent any money. He's bought Gakpo, Diaz, and Nunez in the last three transfer windows.
You know, and I think forward-wise they're sorted. I think midfield, we clearly know he's out the race of Jude Bellingham. We'll see whether he gets McAllister. We'll see whether he's been given the money again. Maybe another centre half. But I just look at everybody else, and I don't see anyone at this moment in time making the step up. The only thing is that, and again, I've said before about, I said a few months ago with Hugh Wisencroft that it's not until Pep goes that will they come back into the pack. But to do this year after year after year after year, look, it's only the fourth time one team has won 3 consecutive top-flight English titles. So they'd be the first team ever to do it if they make it a 4th consecutive. That's really difficult to do, especially off the back if they do get a treble. I mean, you know, Liverpool were 2 games away from the quadruple, and look how they fell through the floor after that last season. I'm not saying that's going to happen with City. I just think that to go again is going to be really, really hard. So we'll have to see what happens. The others need to get up, but I do think City will come a little bit down, especially if they do win the treble.
Yeah, and the treble is certainly Pep Guardiola's focus. He says it's important to stay focused on the Champions League despite the title celebrations.
I think they know it. The feeling I have, the luck I have, they win 5 Premier Leagues and still we have the Champions League to we have fun all that period here. We won a lot. Cannot deny it. There is a part that sometimes can be unfair for the fact you have to win the Champions League to give credit of value what you have done, but you have to accept it. And I think it's good. So for a long time ago, because I said many times, the people didn't call me here to say you have to win the Champions League, but after what I've done, I know we'll not complete if I don't win the Champions League. We don't win the Champions League. So, and sometimes play with this pressure is so nice. It's necessary. So we talk each other a lot, so we have to do it. But in the same time, if we are not able to do it, if the team continue, the club continue in this way, sooner or later we'll do it. But once we are there, so we have here, so we have to try it.
Pep wasn't in the most sort of generous mood on Sunday. He just wanted to get on with the job. He's got things to focus on in terms of the FA Cup final and the Champions League final to plot for as well. They'll sign someone in the summer as they always do, but the rumours are that they might now keep hold of Ilkay Gundogan after Arsenal sort of started to float the possibility that he could go there. Arsenal linked with a couple of midfielders. Chelsea still looking for a number 9. Someone sent me this earlier on. We talked about goals and Julian Alvarez. Someone sent me this earlier on. The curse of Chelsea's number 9. These are Chelsea's number 9s over the last 10, 15 years. In fact, going further than that, 20 years. 1999, Chris Sutton, 39 goals. 39 goals, we will wish. 39 games, 1 goal. Kesman, 41 games, 7 goals. Cali Bullaruz, he was a defender, but he wore number 9. It's not fair. Steve Sidwell, again, same thing. Franco De Santo, 16 games, 0 goals. Fernando Torres, 172 games, 45 goals. That's like 1 in 4. Radamel Falcao, 12 games, 1 goal. Morata, 48-15. Higuain, 18 games, 5 goals. Romelu Lukaku, 44-15. I mean, they conveniently missed out Idiger Johnson and Jimmy Floyd Hasselback there, but also Pierluigi Casaraghi, who didn't work out either. Or Andrei Shevchenko, who, funnily enough, didn't work out either. They weren't actually number 9s, though. Look, it's been a terrible season for Chelsea, and they've just got to lick their wounds and go again. And Manchester United fans are all doing the old social media campaigning bit, Crook. Could you explain this to me about the idea of trying to get Erling Haaland banned from the FA Cup final?
Well, basically it was because he swore in a television interview, didn't he? He declared his undying love for Jack Grealish using an expletive, and I think Wayne Rooney was banned. Wayne Rooney was banned by the FA because he swore into a TV camera. Listen, I don't think it will happen. It was ridiculous at the time with Rooney. It'll be ridiculous at the time now. Just on Chelsea's number 9, keep an eye on Victor Osimhen. I'm told he's the one that they're really keen on this summer.
Great. Let's see if we can ruin him as well, poor lad. Had a bright future.
He would be my number 1 choice. Harry Kane's not going there, so he would be my number 1 choice.
Oh, poor fella. It was going so well for him. Up next for Manchester City, a trip to the seaside to take on Brighton, who confirmed European football for the first time in their history. And Brighton in Europe, and it's going to be the Europa League. I mean, lots of people sort of getting confused here. They have qualified for the Conference League. That's done. But ultimately, if they finish in 6th, they'll qualify for the Europa League because of the fact that the cup winners are both already finishing above them. Now, they are going to finish in 6th because of their absolutely amazing goal difference, unless Manchester City beat them 10-0 in midweek and then Aston Villa beat them 7-0 on Sunday. If that happens, then there's a chance they might just get into the Conference League. But it ain't going to happen. So they're going to be in the Europa League. And how big an achievement is that, Scott?
It's just amazing. I mean, it's just incredible. I'm sure I played for Rotherham against Brighton at the Whitdean. And I was certainly involved in it. And, how far they've come is nothing short of sensational. And it's not just in terms of results, it's in terms of style of football. And look, we've talked about it a long time. It all comes from the owner. And I hear that the owner actually does have a little bit of a say in terms of recruitment because he knows with
he has
all the
a lot of say.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas most owners perhaps shouldn't. He does and is absolutely spot on with that. Then you've got a fantastic CEO and then you've got everything set up. So manager goes, new manager comes in, De Zerbi takes it to another level. I love his attitude about, qualified for Europa Conference, but that's not what we want. We want Europa League. My worry is for Brighton, what's going to happen for them in the summer in terms of going as well as coming in. Can they crack on? Because I actually think De Zerbi is one of those managers. And you look at, there's reasons why he hasn't stayed at clubs for so long, but actually there's a lot of clubs where he hasn't stayed for so long. So I just wonder where he's one of those, if he's not happy, he'll create certain situations. And if he's not getting the players that he wants to kick on, we'll see. But look, let's not be negative about that. They've been sensational. They really have.
Yeah, the squad's going to be picked apart, though, Crook, isn't it?
Picked apart's a bit strong. I think they're planning for the departures of Alexis McAllister. Liverpool looks most likely, although no agreement has been reached yet. And probably Moises Caicedo as well, still very much on Arsenal's hit list. But there's already players coming in. João Pedro has been signed to come and add to their attack. I think James Milner is pretty much done. De Hood, German international at Borussia Dortmund, will happen as well. And another player that is obviously known to De Zerbi at Sassuolo, Davide Fratesi, is, I think, probably the likely replacement for Caicedo. Is a holding midfielder, and there's strong interest from Brighton in him. So they will regenerate. I think De Zerbi will give them at least one more year. Brighton are well aware of his habit, as Graeme Souness pointed out, for not staying anywhere for too long. So they'll have a plan in place, because I think probably at the end of next season, they will face a bit of a fight to keep him. But I think he's committed at least for next year.
And he did turn around and say straight after the game on Sunday that, this is all great. And Tony is the number one fan of Brighton. But now is the time to show us what we really mean. We need to do this. We need to do that. We have to do this. We have to do it. It was tub thumping, as if he was sort of challenging the owner to match his ambition, which I thought was quite interesting. Talking of ambition, what's Spurs' ambition? They were beaten at home by Brentford by 3-1. Their chances of being in Europe look slimmer and slimmer and slimmer by the day. Another home defeat, booed off by the fans again. They were pretty good in the first half. They should have been 2 or 3 up in the match. In the second half, they were nothing short of abysmal once Brian Mbeumo scored the goal. Passive, insipid, sat off. Scott and I were both at this game. And I got to be honest with you, Scott, I thought they were pathetic second half.
They were. It's normally the other way around, isn't it? Rubbish first half and decent second half. But this time, they should have put the game to bed. They were good in the first half and they did create enough chances to make it 2, if not 3. But yeah, the reaction, you knew that Brentford would come out. And I said at half time, I think Ryan Mason should be the one not happy with his scoreline, because you get the feeling Brentford will come at them. And then suddenly, bang, bang, 2 goals. And you're right, it wasn't until the last 5 minutes where they did create some chances that they looked like they were going to do it. And the fans, I really feel for the fans so much. They wanted to get behind the team. They even stuck with the team at 2-1 as well. But, oh my goodness me. I mean, again, where do we go with this? If you still haven't got your manager, it looks like it could be Slot, but you need to get someone in, at least make an appointment, because as bad as Chelsea have been this season, at least they know where they're going forward. Tottenham is just like new manager being linked, and then he's distancing himself. So let's get Slot announced, and then at least they can move forward that way.
And what about Harry Kane? Because at the end of the game, he sort of went around waving to everybody. Was that just a traditional end-of-season lap of dishonour, or was it actually time to say goodbye?
Well, only Harry Kane knows the answer. We mentioned on the boot room on Sunday that Clive Allen, who obviously is fairly close to the situation, suggested that maybe there was an agreement that he would stay until the end of his contract and then become available on a free transfer. I think that would be a wasted year for Harry Kane. I think this season proves to him that Tottenham are a long way from challenging for major honours. Maybe.
But I mean, obviously, he's had a great season. He's got 28 Premier League goals, 30 goals in all competitions. He's still been brilliant. I mean,
and they're still going to miss out on Europe. What does that tell you if you're Harry Kane?
Well, it tells you that the team around you are badly organised. I mean, it tells you what we all know, which is that Spurs are an absolute mess. But I mean, that's not his fault, is it? I mean, he can only do what he wants to do, and if it's his boyhood club, and he loves that team, and he's got the chance to be the captain from now on because Hugo Lloris is going to leave. Shouldn't he stick around and be a part of the rebuild? I don't know. Is that a possibility?
No, I listen. I don't think he should, and it's purely his love for the club that is keeping him. Although saying that, actually, who can Daniel? I think politically speaking, Daniel Levy can't afford to sell Harry Kane. He cannot afford to, unless it's a real bang. There's £100 million on a guy who's going to be 30 and 1 year left in his contract. Look, fans, we can't turn this one down. He cannot afford to be seen to be selling their one positive thing that they have at the club. And from Harry Kane's point of view, you've just scored 27, 28 Premier League goals in a team that's not particularly good. You've just seen Erling Haaland scoring lots more goals in a team that is very good. And he's not going abroad. He wants the Premier League record. I think he'd have more chance of a Premier League record if he went to another club that's going, say, a Manchester United, or he's not going to go to Arsenal or Chelsea, but United really is probably the only one. So he can still tick all those boxes and win trophies. But it's about his love for Spurs and that 1 year contract.
Crook was quite scathing of him on the boot room on Sunday night, basically suggesting that he lacked ambition if he stayed at Spurs. I want to take issue with that, because what you're basically saying is that you have to go to one of these big super clubs and win medals, otherwise your career isn't fulfilled. I think when you're growing up as a footballer, if you're a massive Tottenham fan and you are Tottenham's top scorer for 10 years in a row, you win Player of the Year, you're Golden Boot winner, you get to a final with England, you get to a couple of finals with Spurs, you challenge, you're playing in the Champions League. A lot of your dreams are already fulfilled. Yeah, okay, so he hasn't got that one big medal round his neck. But if you're a dreamer and you love Tottenham Hotspur, surely the idea of being at the fulcrum of eventually getting Spurs that trophy is bigger than going off and getting one at Manchester City. Everyone can go to Manchester City and win a title, or everyone can go to the next club and win an FA Cup or a Carabao Cup. To win it with Tottenham would mean so much more to him, and that may be his ambition.
I get that. If there was any signs that Tottenham were capable of challenging for honours, and I think this season more than any other.
Oh, no, it was only 4 years ago they were in the Champions League final.
That isn't going to happen.
Years ago they were in the Carabao Cup final.
But this season's been a disaster. They lost in the FA Cup to Sheffield United.
This season's been a disaster.
They crashed out of Europe early on to a side.
Last year was a disaster for Manchester United. They won a trophy in 2 finals this year. Got into the top 4. Anything can change. Every now and again, there's a season that's a disaster. Just accept it.
Listen, Sam, you do a very good job of trying to play devil's advocate, but no, it's season after season after season that's happening for Spurs, and the Spurs fans even get it. They even understand if Harry Kane.
They're telling him to go.
They say that now. Do they say that now? But actually, when it happens,
they would be absolutely gutted to
milk.
see Harry Kane wearing another shirt, but they would completely understand it. From Harry Kane's point of view, he can tick all the goal-scoring boxes. He's already a Spurs legend. He should already have that statue outside set up for it at some time in the future, and he can get a few medals around his neck.
Stuart Pearce said on Saturday, I said to him, "What do you think he should do next?" And he said, "I think for Harry's own career, he should try something new now." And I just thought, Stuart's quite sort of sit on the fence. He's not going to come out with big, bold statements, but one former England captain telling a current England captain, probably time to move on now, fella, was quite sort of sage advice and quite a big moment, I thought. Manchester United Chelsea's Thursday night. That's live on talkSPORT as well. And then over the weekend, we've got loads of playoff drama for you. And of course, the final day of the Premier League season. We're back on Thursday afternoon. The podcast available to download from Thursday afternoon, when you'll be able to get a full preview to all the weekend's action.